Virgo, Virgo's reward. What the universe will give you back this Saturday and Sunday. There's one thing Virgos do so well, it seems like a virtue. So automatically it seems like instinct, and that's precisely why nobody ever questions it. Virgo is waiting, but not in the way you're thinking now. It's not the waiting of someone who doesn't act. Virgo acts all the time, planning, organizing, reviewing, improving, recalculating. Virgo's waiting is something else. It's a waiting that happens internally, silently, while everything outside seems to be in motion. It's the waiting of someone who hasn't yet allowed themselves to receive. And here comes the first question that will linger for a while. If you do everything right, if you put in the effort, if you are the sign that dedicates itself most to the quality of what it delivers to the world, why does the feeling of reward still seem so distant? It's not because the universe has forgotten you. It's not because you don't deserve it. The answer is more disturbing than either of those two options. And it begins in a place that Virgo rarely examines, within the very analytical system she has built to survive. Imagine a researcher, brilliant, meticulous, passionate about her work. She spends years collecting data, formulating hypotheses, testing variables, revising results. The day arrives when the work is finished, more than finished. It's extraordinary. And then she does something that seems strange from the outside. She starts revising again. Not because she found an error, but because publishing means being read. And being read means being judged. And being judged for something that matters so much is a vulnerability she doesn't yet know how to handle. So she revises and revises. And while she revises, the world remains unaware of what she has discovered. This is what Virgo calls waiting, and the world calls it prudence, but there's a more honest name for it. Part of you already knows what it is. The problem isn't the review process. The problem is what the review is protecting, because beneath all that careful analysis lies a question that has never been asked aloud. What if I show who I really am, and it's not enough? There's something the universe does to Virgo that no other sign experiences in the same way. He returns the favor with surgical precision, with a sense of opportunity that seems almost personal. He returns the favor, except that Virgo, when this happens, is almost always looking the other way. Not because she's distracted. Virgos are never distracted, but because at the exact moment the reward arrives, she's probably reviewing something, analyzing something. Check if what she did was good enough to deserve what she's about to receive. And then the universe waits, patient, silent, with the gift in its outstretched hand. This Saturday and Sunday carry something specific for Virgo. It's not a promise. It's not generic hope. It's a cycle that has reached a point of openness, one of those moments when internal resistance lowers and what was sent with care and dedication begins to return. But there's one thing you need to understand before you get there. Something about how Virgo works on the inside, a silent mechanism that intercepts exactly what should arrive, that completely changes what will happen to you this weekend. Virgo was born with an extraordinary mind, a mind that sees details that others don't, that finds patterns where others see chaos, that senses when something is out of place even before it can name what it is. This mind is a gift. But every gift has a cost that we only discover when we start to truly use it. The cost of the Virgo mind is that it never rests. It's always processing, always evaluating, always asking if something is real, if it's safe, if it's enough. And for a long time, this processing protected Virgo from many things. It protected them from bad decisions, from the wrong people, from rash actions. But there comes a point, and perhaps you've already felt this, when the protection system starts to protect too much. When the filter that was created to separate the good from the bad starts filtering out the good as well. And Virgo is left standing still, with a very fine sieve in hand, dying of thirst while the water passes through her and goes away. What are you filtering right now that should be getting in? Think about how Virgo receives a compliment, a genuine, sincere one, from someone who admires their work. What happens inside? There's a fraction of a second, sometimes not even a fraction, sometimes it's long enough to be uncomfortable, when Virgo's mind automatically goes to, "But I could have done better. They didn't see the mistake I saw. It's just politeness, it's not real." The compliment arrives, and before it lands, it's intercepted. Not denied, intercepted. There is a huge difference between these two verbs. To deny would be to reject outright. But Virgo doesn't reject, she analyzes. And in the analysis, the praise loses its power. It loses weight. It loses its ability to nourish. It reaches the heart already diluted, already questioned, already smaller than when it was sent. And the universe works the same way. It sends. Virgo intercepts. Not on purpose, not out of ingratitude, but because the system was built that way, to examine everything before letting it pass. And a system that examines everything inevitably ends up examining itself as well. The rewards that arrive, as if they also needed to prove they were real before being received. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. Not as an instruction manual. Virgo already has enough manuals, but as a different kind of mirror. One that doesn't reflect the image you're used to seeing, the one you've edited yourself over the years. One that shows what's beneath the filter. What was there before you learned that you needed to prove yourself enough to deserve it? You are in this moment right now, still processing what you have just recognized in yourself. That discomfort that lingers, that question that hasn't been answered yet. This is exactly the state in which this content makes the most sense. Not after you organize your thoughts, not after you decide if it's worth delving into. Now, while the wound is still fresh and the recognition is still hot. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And before we continue, let me ask you a question to answer in the comments. When was the last time you received something good, and instead of simply feeling gratitude, your mind went straight to a reason why it might not have been real? Write it below. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be true. There's a technical name for what Virgos do with the rewards they receive. Psychologists call it disqualification of the positive. But Virgos don't need the technical name to recognize the mechanism. They already know how it works internally. They know what it tastes like. They know the sound it makes when activated. It's that moment when something good happens, and the first thought isn't one of joy, it's one of suspicion. Where did this come from? Why now? How long will it last? What will I have to do in return? And while all these questions are being processed, joy is put on hold, waiting for a release that sometimes never comes. The problem isn't distrust itself. Distrust is intelligent. It's adaptive. It's the result of a mind that has learned that the real world has traps disguised as gifts. But what happens when this distrust no longer distinguishes between a trap and a genuine gift? When the defense system is so efficient that it treats the sun the same way it treats fire? Virgos can see patterns in anything. In data, in behavior, in relationships, in structures. But there's one pattern they rarely turn to for themselves. The pattern of how they reject what they need most. Think of an antivirus. Not just any antivirus, the most sophisticated in the world. So precise, so up-to-date, so efficient that nothing malicious gets past it. But at some point, after years of updates, refinements, and accumulated learning, this antivirus starts deleting legitimate files. It starts blocking programs that are safe because they have a structure it has never seen before. Because they are new. Because they are different. Being different for a very efficient protection system, it starts to seem suspicious by definition. Virgo built this antivirus within themselves. And it worked very well. For a long time, it worked perfectly. But there comes a moment, and perhaps that moment is now, when the question is no longer, how do I protect myself best? The question becomes, what am I blocking that should be nourishing me? And that question hurts, because it implies that part of the problem lies within, that the universe may have already sent several times what Virgo was waiting for, and that she herself intercepted it before it arrived. Not out of weakness, not out of stupidity, but because of a system so well constructed that it has become invisible to those who built it. How do you disable something you created yourself? How do you program a system that has been running silently, efficiently, and absolutely convinced that it's protecting you in the background for decades? The answer isn't in shutting down the system, it's in updating it, in teaching it a new definition of security, one that includes receiving without justification, trusting without demanding prior proof, allowing the good to arrive without first having to go through an internal tribunal. This interception system that Virgo has built, it doesn't appear in any typical astrology book, but it's precisely mapped out in the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. Not as a diagnosis, as a way out, as the actual process of updating this internal antivirus without destroying the analytical capacity that makes Virgo who it is. Because the goal was never to erase the filter. It was to teach it to recognize what is nourishment, not just what is a threat. If you're feeling right now that this content is speaking to you in a very specific way, it's because it is, and this book goes even deeper. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Now comes the paradox that is perhaps the most beautiful and the most unsettling at the same time. Virgo is the sign most capable of analyzing patterns in the external world. They see what others don't. They perceive when something is wrong before having enough data to prove it. They read their surroundings with a precision that sometimes frightens those around them. It's an almost supernatural ability, this internal radar that picks up frequencies that others simply don't tune into. But there is a blind spot, a place where the radar doesn't point, inside. The mind that maps everything around it has a silent difficulty in mapping itself, not because I am less capable, but because examining oneself with the same starkness with which one examines the world requires a specific kind of courage. The courage to see one's own patterns without the possibility of correcting them before recognizing them. When Virgo looks at the world, she can analyze, adjust, improve. There's always a possible next step. But when she looks inward, what she finds sometimes doesn't have an immediate next step. There's only the truth. And truth without a next step is the most uncomfortable place a solution-oriented mind can inhabit. Think of a mirror. It reflects everything with absolute perfection, faces, details, light, shadow, but the mirror cannot reflect itself, not because it is defective, but because it is the nature of the instrument. It exists to show the other, not itself. For the mirror to see itself, it needs another mirror, an external angle, a perspective that it cannot generate on its own. Virgo needs a mirror like that. Not criticism. She already has plenty of criticism, especially the kind she produces herself. She needs a reflection, something that returns the image unedited, unjudged, without the layer of "it could be better" that she automatically applies to everything she sees. And there's something even more disturbing about this paradox. The same mind that analyzes patterns with such precision is the one that creates problems where none exist, when the subject is itself. Not out of masochism, out of over-processing. Because when there isn't a clear external problem to solve, the mind needs somewhere to put all that analytical energy, and the most readily available place is within itself. So Virgo creates internal problems to keep the mind occupied. Small imperfections that become big, doubts that become negative certainties, distorted perceptions that seem objective because they have been analyzed very carefully. And the universe, meanwhile, is sending signals that this overly busy mind cannot receive, because receiving requires something that constant processing doesn't allow: presence. Being here. Not already being on to the next problem, the next review, the next issue to be resolved. Being here, now, available for what's coming. And it's arriving. This blind spot, Virgo's difficulty in seeing itself with the same clarity with which it sees everything around it, is exactly what the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose was built to illuminate. Not from the outside in, as yet another external analysis of a sign that has already received too much analysis, but from the inside out, as a tool for discernment that helps Virgo distinguish between what is true self-perception and what is self-criticism disguised as objectivity. Because there is a huge difference between the two, and Virgo, better than anyone, deserves to learn to recognize this difference. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Nothing mystical is happening this weekend. Something much more real is happening. There is an opening. Energy cycles don't work like delivery calendars, where you schedule and the package arrives on the agreed date. They work like tides. The tide doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't wait for you to finish the review. It arrives. And when it's high, you might be at the water's edge, available to it. Or you might be so engrossed in your own thoughts that you only realize it's past when it's already gone back. This Saturday and Sunday carry a specific quality of energy for Virgo, not of conquest, of opening, like a window that appears once a season, not because the universe decided to reward you, but because the cycle has reached a point of low resistance. A point where what you sent out into the world with care, with dedication, with all that inner demand that only Virgo knows, begins to return. Not to be analyzed, to be received. The question is simple, yet it's the hardest one you'll ask yourself today. Will you be available when it arrives? Available doesn't mean without doubts. It doesn't mean having resolved all internal issues. It doesn't mean being certain you deserve it. It simply means being here, present, with the sieve set aside long enough to let the water in. Virgo spent a lot of time sending, building, refining, delivering, serving. What comes now is the return. And the return doesn't need to be analyzed to be real. It just needs to be received. Imagine how different it would be to spend this weekend without the filter active, without the automatic analysis of what's coming, without the question, but why now? Without the need to understand before feeling. Just feel, just receive, just allow what the universe has in store for you to arrive without being intercepted before it lands. This is not naivete. Naivete would be receiving without discernment, without care, without the wisdom that Virgo has built. What I'm talking about is something else. It's mature discernment, knowing how to distinguish between what needs analysis and what only needs openness, between what is a trap and what is a gift, between what requires care and what requires surrender. Virgo possesses this distinction within itself. It simply needs, sometimes, permission to use it. And the greatest reward the universe can give Virgo is not material. It's not an external result. It's the internal recognition that she is enough now, not after yet another revision, not after correcting yet another flaw. Now, exactly as she is. There is something far more radical than any external change Virgo could make. It is to stop. Not to stop acting, but to stop experiencing. To stop proving that you deserve it. To stop building the internal argument that justifies why good things can come. To stop demanding a performance of deservingness from yourself before allowing yourself to receive. Think of a tree. It doesn't wake up in the morning and decide whether to grow towards the sun based on how it assessed itself the night before. It doesn't check if yesterday's growth was enough to deserve today's sun. It simply grows towards what nourishes it, without argument, without revision, without prior proof. This is the most unnatural posture for Virgo, and that's precisely why it's the most powerful. Receiving something without proof doesn't mean you haven't built anything. Virgo has built something, a lot. With care, with integrity, with an attention to detail that few signs have the patience to maintain. That track record exists. It's real. It doesn't need to be represented every time a reward appears at the door. He's already there. The work has already been done. What's lacking isn't more effort. What's lacking is permission. Receiving without proof. For Virgo, this isn't passivity. It's the most courageous act there is. And the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose comes in exactly here, not to convince you that you deserve it, because you already know you do on some level, but to show you how to deactivate in practice the inner voice that demands proof before permission. How Virgo transforms its analytical capacity from an instrument of blockage into an instrument of clarity. The clarity of knowing when to stop examining and simply open your hand. This content exists for the moment you are living now. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a gift on the table. Maybe it's been there longer than you realize. It didn't suddenly appear this weekend. It was gradually placed there through every careful choice you made, every commitment you made with integrity, every time you stayed when it would have been easier to leave, every time you persevered, even when the only thing motivating you was your own inner demand. The universe doesn't forget. It records. And what it has recorded of Virgo over time is a silent dedication, often invisible to others, sometimes even to herself. A dedication that doesn't appear in obvious achievements, because Virgo doesn't usually shout about its results. That doesn't appear in frequent praise, because Virgo rarely lets work go before having revised it one more time. But it's on record, and this weekend is the moment when the universe presents the bill, not as a demand, but as a return. With interest on patience and accumulated wisdom, the only thing Virgo needs to do now is different from everything she's been trained to do. It's not about working harder. It's not about revising more. It's not about preparing more. It's about opening your hand, letting go of the sieve, letting whatever comes, come. Virgo is not the sign of perfection. It's the sign of perception. And the deepest perception she can have of herself is this, that she already is exactly as she is, what the universe needed her to be so that all of this could come to pass. The gift is on the table, open or closed. That choice, as always with Virgo, is yours.